Welcome back to the show. We're picking up right where we left off on our deep dive into agroecology. It feels like just yesterday we were sorting out how agroecology is this blend of science and hands-on farming and a whole social movement all at once.
It really is, isn't it? Like a three-pronged approach.
Exactly. And then we got into those key principles, right? Biodiversity and ecosystem services, managing resources sustainably, and that big one, the social justice angle. Can't forget that.
Oh, for sure. And we got into some super practical examples, too. Crop rotation, agroforestry, even tech stuff. I think even we were surprised by how tech can play a role in agroecology.
Totally. It's not all just going back to the basics. Those are important too. But you know how it is when you finish a really good deep dive or even like a fantastic book.
Yeah, you want more.
Exactly. You're like, where's the further reading list? So that's what today is all about, creating one for all our listeners on their agroecology journeys.
Love it. And perfect timing. I've got a whole pile of resources here that I think you'll find super interesting.
Okay, I'm ready. Where do we even start?
Well, this handbook we've been looking at, Introduction to Agroecology, it does a great job of laying out the basics. But Elaine, it also points us to some really cool resources for going even deeper.
Okay, let's unpack that. What's first up on our agroecology reading list?
They recommend starting with the FAO's Agroecology Knowledge Hub. Now, I know when you hear FAO, you might think,
yeah, super dense policy stuff.
right, totally. Jargon city.
Like something out of a college library.
I know, but trust me, this is actually surprisingly accessible. They've got guides for everyone, farmers, policymakers, students, and even folks like us who just want to learn more. It's kind of a one-stop shop for agroecology.
That's awesome, especially for folks who are just starting to get into this whole world. Did anything on the Knowledge Hub really stand out to you?
Oh, absolutely. Remember when we talked about agroecology bringing back traditional knowledge? They have this case study on a community in the Andes. They're using traditional weaving techniques to make these incredible raised garden beds.
Weaving for garden beds.
Yeah. It improves drainage, prevents soil erosion. Super clever. I was blown away, honestly.
Wow, I never would have thought of that. It's a perfect example of how agroecology blends old knowledge with innovation.
Exactly. It's not just about romanticizing the past. It's about solutions that work for specific communities and their needs.
Okay, so FAO Knowledge Hub, definitely going on our list. What else?
All right, this next one is for the finance folks out there. The Agroecology Fund, their website is actually really fascinating.
The Agroecology Fund, okay.
Tell me more. So it gives you this behind-the-scenes look at how the movement's being funded globally. You see who's investing in agroecology. It's a whole mix. Philanthropic organizations, government agencies, even some private investors.
Interesting. I never really thought about that side of things. But it makes sense. Every movement needs resources to grow, right?
For sure. And by understanding who's putting their money where their mouth is, you kind of get a sense of where the field is headed, what research is being prioritized, what regions are getting the most support,
It's like peeking into the future of agroecology.
Totally. And it reveals some really interesting trends. For instance, did you know that a lot of funding is going towards urban agriculture?
Really? It's not all about rural farms then?
It's not. It's about food security in cities, resilience as climate change ramps up, It's cool how agroecology is being adapted for all kinds of places.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got the Knowledge Hub for practical stuff, the Agroecology Fund website for the big picture. This is great. What's next?
All right, this one isn't specifically about agroecology techniques, but it's powerful. Connects agriculture and history and social justice, Have you ever heard of Farming While Black?
Oh yeah, the title just grabs you. Even if you're not farming while black, I feel like that book has a lot to say.
It really does. The author, Leah Penniman, weaves together all this practical knowledge about agroecology with the story of African heritage and its connection to the land. A must-read for anyone who cares about the social justice side of our food.
We've talked a lot about how agroecology isn't just about the environment, right? It's about social justice and fairness, too. I feel like this book really brings that to life.
Oh, it does. And it's not just pointing out problems, it's offering hope, showing how agroecology can revitalize cultures and heal communities.
Definitely adding that to my reading list.
Yeah.
So we've got a website for resources, one for the money side of things, and now a book that tackles social justice. Great mix. Anything else from the handbook we should check out?
Oh, yeah. They mentioned some amazing local and global agroecology networks. These are like the heart of the movement,
Yeah.
connecting farmers, researchers, activists, anyone who wants to promote agroecology in their communities.
I bet it's more than just sharing info, though, right? It's
Yeah.
about building a movement, yeah?
You got it. Collective action, advocacy, support, connecting you with like-minded folks locally and globally.
So cool. Like, imagine a farmer in Iowa connecting with someone doing agroecology in India. What an amazing exchange of knowledge, right?
Mhm. Right. It's about creating this global community of practice, learning from each other to build a food system that's sustainable and fair.
I love that. But I'm curious, what are some concrete examples of these networks? Where can people find them?
Well, there's La Via Campesina, which is this international peasant movement. They've been advocating for small-scale farmers and food sovereignty for years. They're a powerful voice in the global agroecology movement.
Food sovereignty, that's a really interesting idea. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. It's about communities having the right to choose their own food and farming systems, not being controlled by global markets. It's about getting back in control of what we eat and how it's grown.
So agroecology and food sovereignty really go together.
Oh, they totally do. And there are regional networks too. Like here in the US, we've got the Agroecology Network. Europe has the European Agroecology Network. They're all about making connections, sharing info, and pushing for policy changes.
Awesome. So if anyone wants to get involved in agroecology, these networks are a great place to start.
They are. It's like finding your people. That feeling of knowing you're not alone in this. There's a whole community ready to learn, support, and work together for a better future for food and farming. It's so cool how these networks give you that sense of solidarity, like you're part of something bigger, even when you're just taking small actions yourself.
Yeah, totally. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the scale of all the problems, but when you know there are all these people working toward the same goal, it's really empowering. But speaking of action, this handbook we have, it really emphasizes that just reading about agroecology isn't enough. We need to actually apply it too, right?
100%. And they have a good point. You don't have to change your whole life all at once. Even small things can make a difference. They even suggest starting with something as simple as going to a local CSA or farmers market.
Oh, I love farmers markets. It's such a great way to support local farmers and get that fresh seasonal produce. And you can even talk to the people who grew your food.
It's a direct connection, right? And it can be a gateway to learning more about agroecology. You can ask the farmers about their practices, the challenges they face, how you can help them out. It goes both ways. They share their knowledge, and you get to support businesses that align with what you believe in.
Every purchase we make is a vote for the kind of food system we want. But say someone's ready to go a step further. Maybe they have a garden or even just a windowsill. What are some small agroecology practices they could try?
Oh, so many options. Remember when we talked about diversifying what you plant? Even in a few pots on a balcony, you can play around with companion planting. Planting basil with your tomatoes, for example, can help keep pests away and even make the tomatoes taste better.
Like a little mini ecosystem right on your balcony. It shows you that you don't need tons of land to practice agroecology. You can start wherever you are.
Exactly. And if you have a bit more space, you could try composting. Great way to recycle food scraps and yard waste. You rely less on chemical fertilizers, and you end up with this nutrient-rich stuff for your garden.
I've always thought composting seemed a bit intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple once you get the hang of it, right?
It is. There are tons of guides online that can walk you through it, and it's so satisfying to see those kitchen scraps turn into rich soil. It's like magic, but with science.
I love that. It's all about closing the loop like we were talking about, creating a system where nothing goes to waste.
Yes. And it's not just about your own backyard either. You can get involved in advocacy and support policies that help agroecology. Write to your representatives, go to town halls, join a local food policy council. There are so many ways to make your voice heard.
So important. Individual actions are great, but to really change things, we need collective action. We need policies that support farmers who are practicing agroecology, policies that put money into research and education, and prioritize the health of our environment and communities over corporate profits.
100%. It's about changing the whole system, moving away from industrial agriculture and towards something that's more regenerative and just...
Which leads to a question I think is worth thinking about. What does a truly agroecological future look like? What are the possibilities if we really embrace these principles and practices on a larger scale?
Such a good question. And I think it's one we need to keep asking as we go on this journey. What kind of world are we trying to create? What kind of food system do you want to leave behind for the next generation?
I'm picturing a world where food isn't just something you buy, but something that connects us. Where farms aren't just factories, but thriving ecosystems. where communities have the power to decide how their food is grown. It's a world where we're not just taking from the earth, but giving back, restoring the soil, and creating enough for everyone.
That's a beautiful vision. And it's possible if we're willing to work together, challenge the way things are, and really embrace how transformative agroecology can be. It's funny, when you really start digging into agroecology, it's easy to get caught up in the little details, like the specific techniques or those policy debates. But at the end of the day, it's so much bigger than that. It's about shifting our whole way of looking at things, our relationship with nature, even with each other.
Yeah, it really is a paradigm shift, and it makes us rethink how we value stuff, not just in terms of money, but also ecological health, social justice, and thinking about sustainability for the long haul.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those agroecology networks we talked about. They're so key for building that systems thinking. It's not just about one farmer making changes by themselves, it's about creating a whole movement.
Like that saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
We can achieve so much more when we come together, share what we know, and help each other out, rather than trying to do it all alone.
100%. Those networks create the space for that to happen. For farmers to learn from each other, share tips, advocate for policies that help agroecology thrive, and really challenge the industrial ag system with a united front.
It's about taking back power, right, from those big corporations and putting it back in the hands of the people who are actually growing our food.
Exactly, and that's where things get really exciting, when we start to see agroecology as more than just farming practices, but as this force for social and political change.
It's about food sovereignty, like we talked about before. Communities having the right to decide what their food systems look like and getting back in control of what they eat.
Yes, it's such a powerful idea, the idea that people and the planet should come before corporate profits. It really challenges the way things are.
It's amazing to think about the ripple effects this movement could have.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can change our food systems, what else could we achieve?
That's the beauty of agroecology. It's not just about fixing a broken system. It's about building something totally new, something that's fairer, more sustainable, something that works with nature, not against it.
And it all starts with just one step, right? Joining a CSA, starting a compost bin, becoming part of an agroecology network. Every little thing we do adds up and moves us in the right direction.
I think that's a really hopeful message to leave our listeners with. We don't have to wait for someone else to save the day. We can all be part of the solution. And we can start today.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, we encourage you to keep learning about agroecology. Check out those resources we talked about, find those networks, try things out your own garden, and share what you learn with others.
Let's create a future where food is more than just fuel. It can be a force for good, a force that benefits us all and the planet we share.
That's a future worth working for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into agroecology. We'll see you next time.